Well, at this point, I just briefly want to discuss with you some basic filters that you can work with inside of Photoshop. And by no means is this an exhaustive look at the filters, but I just want to give you a brief rundown of some of the ones that you may encounter. And you'll find that simple rule whenever you're working with filters is, generally speaking, filters in conjunction with either blend modes or some other brushwork or something along those lines can really enhance your photographic wizardry and really make things come to life inside of Photoshop. But remember, you should really concentrate on the fundamentals first, and that's what this particular video tutorial was all about, as opposed to jumping to the icing on our cake before we actually have any substantial, foundation to go with it. So, let's just briefly look at what we're doing here. I've got oldman.jpg open, and again, it's a pretty large image, right? It says 16.7% for me here. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, and again, this is more than likely just because if you don't have a very strong computer to begin with, having a really huge image that we're going to be throwing filters on top of can take a little longer. So if we go to Edit, or excuse me, if we go to Image rather, and we go to our image size, I can click on this and we can, just make this a smaller image. Right now the width is 2000 pixels across, right? And the resolution is set to 400. Well, I'm just going to set this to 72, as if it was a web-based document. And you'll see right now it'll figure out, well, if you want it at 72, I'm going to give you a width of 360 and a height of 535. So if we click OK, that's rather small at 17%, but if we press Command 1, there it is at 100%. And at 100%, it's a pretty small image, but nevertheless, it works for us relatively in this manner. So what I'm going to do is to go to the Filter menu, and we can see a bunch of elements working with our filters here. And as you'll notice, there are a lot of artistic and blur filters and brushstroke and all kinds of different things that you can do. Well, if you go to the filter gallery, it's one easy way that you can take a look at a good deal of these filters all at the same time. For example, you'll notice here, well, I don't really want that stylized one, so we'll get away from that. One of the first things you'll see here is the artistics. And if we come in here, there's a little preview there, and if we click on this, that's what our colored pencil might look like in this specific area. Well, notice it's got some options here on the side. For example, is this a colored pencil? Is this something using chrome? Wow, that's really weird. Is it something using charcoal? Something using chalk and charcoal? Right? So there's very many. Dry brush, and you can play with, brush sizes, as you can see, brush detail, whether it's stroked or something like that, and again also with texture as well. So all kinds of crazy things. If you go to cutout, you can see the number of levels that you want for your cutout. The edge simplicity, whether it's really simple geometrics or whether it's going for something a little more curved. Just like that. The edge fidelity. So these are really fun things. Dry brush, the film grain, fresco, neon light, paint daubs. And again, you can play with any of these. Palette knife, poster edges. And poster edges is a fun one that you can use by creating sort of an illustration and drawing and painting just by overlapping this and working with different things. But in future exercises, as I mentioned, and more importantly in future video tutorials that will be offered of Photoshop by killersites.com, you'll be able to explore some really interesting types of special effects that we see here and used in conjunction with other effects inside of Photoshop to create some really, really interesting and truly dynamic elements. So as you can see, this is a great way to start just by, understanding and learning a little bit about what's going on in here. Crosshatch effect is quite nice. The dark strokes, you could see what's going on there. So a lot of these things can be a lot of fun to work with, and I encourage you to work with them and experiment with them at first. But as I mentioned, some of these are not really going to make a lot of sense until you actually come in and apply some other elements to them. So we'll see exactly what I mean. For example, there are a whole set that are outside of this realm. I'm just going to Control Z undo that for a second. And you'll notice here, if you go to the filter menu, all of those filter galleries, a lot of these were in the artistics, as we saw, as well as the sketch. These are all in there as well, among other things. Textures that you can apply. But we didn't see anything about blurs. As you can see here, there's a whole set of blurs which are really great. And again, that's something that we can explore a lot more in a future lesson, more advanced Photoshop classes. But just to give you an idea of how filters can be used in conjunction with other elements, let's take a look at this. There's a great way. For example, if we select this, Command J to make a copy, here is the copied layer. And if I were to just give it a very generous amount of, say, Gaussian blur, you'll see that's very generous. You know, do we need it that much? Maybe we just need it about like 3. And even this, as you can see, that's generally something you want to avoid, something you want to ignore. But as soon as we turn this into an overlay layer, wow, look at the difference. You can really see how those colors just come to life. Now, obviously it's a little bit too much, so we'll bump that down. And even if we go to something like 28%, just look at those differences. Really, really nice. And they really enhance some of those colors. So there's a lot of great stuff that you can do. Like I said, normally this just looks very blurry, as we can see there. But if we set that to an overlay mode, bang, all of a sudden things are looking much sharper and the colors are looking much more vibrant. So a lot that we can do with filters, and we'll see more of those in future, more advanced Photoshop video tutorials.